Yo, what's going on, dudes? Hopefully everyone is doing okay, so welcome back to the channel. In this video we're going to be talking a little bit more in depth about countersteering. Countersteering is one of those things where it's for some reason imprinted in our brain. We naturally know how to do it without thinking about it, but the thing with that is we don't actually understand what it is we're doing unless you learn about it. But then when you learn about countersteering, you go, okay, I think I've been doing that actually. But learning about countersteering and learning why you do it can make riding a bike a lot easier. I'm not going to go into the whole physics side of things, because you can look into it that way, but to be honest with you, it makes it really confusing. There's a lot of kind of mathematics to it, why the bike does it, why the bike leans at a certain angle, all the centre of gravity and all that sort of stuff. So if you want to look into it that way, go for it. I've looked into it a little bit and it makes it complicated when it doesn't need to be complicated. Because if you look too much into it and start thinking about centre of gravity, all these different angles and stuff, then you're going to be thinking about that stuff when you're out on the road, and you don't want to be doing that. Countersteering should be second nature. You shouldn't have to be thinking, okay, now this website said that I have to do this certain angle at this lean and all this sort of stuff. No, you don't have to think about it like that. I think the whole confusion about countersteering is the fact that you're counter-steering. It's not like traditional steering where if you want to turn left, you turn the handlebars to the left and you go left. That's the kind of stuff you do when you're doing U-turns, slow manoeuvre stuff. You know, if I'm doing a U-turn, I'll turn the handlebars to the right, which will make the bike turn round. There comes a point when that isn't going to work, and that is based on speed. It varies, you know, it really does. People have different opinions on it. Personally for me, I think countersteering kicks in about 15 miles per hour. Anything over that, I think traditional steering, it can be used a little bit, but not a lot. Not certainly the way you would use it doing a U-turn and stuff like that. Countersteer, then do a little bit of traditional steering, but the faster you go, the less likely you're going to be doing that traditional style, and it's going to be all counter. I tell you, the roads are slippy today, man. They are really slippy. It's been raining non-stop here for about the last 3 or 4 days, and this is the first chance that it's actually stopped. So that's why I'm out recording this video just now, and I can tell that the roads have been wet for a while. There are a lot of leaves, a lot of grease on the roads. It's it's take your time sort of weather. We're going to head down to our little car park, providing it's quiet, and we're going to talk about countersteering. I'll show you how to do it, because you can practice it sitting on a bike. You don't have to be on a moving bike to practice it. That's the beauty of it. So we'll go down here, have a wee practice, show you some practice drills you can do while sitting stationary. Just now, I'm countersteering. Alright? It's something I'm not even thinking about. You know, I'm not even thinking about it. I'm just doing it. It's actually one of those natural things that we do, like I said earlier on. But once you learn about it, it becomes imprinted and you realise what you're actually doing. Are we quiet today? We have the whole place to ourselves, dudes. Not that we need it, I mean, we're only going to be sitting stationary, but we've got the whole place to ourselves. So countersteering, I like to call it push steering, because essentially what you're doing is you're pushing the bars, alright? You're pushing the bars where you want the bike to go. So there's a couple of things you have to keep in mind, and it helps you understand cornering a little bit better. The basics are, if I want to go around a right hand corner, I'd push on the right hand bar. Now watch what the bike does. I'm going to keep my hand straight. See what the bike does? I don't want to do it too much obviously, because it's quite a heavy bike, don't want to drop it, but if I push it, see if the bike leans to the right. If I want to go around a left hand corner, the bike leans to the left. I'm just putting my hand here for reference, just so you can see the bike leaning slightly. When you're going around a corner, what you want to do is you want to lean the bike to the inside of the corner. If you're going around a right hand corner, you want to lean the bike to the right, to the inside of the corner. If you're going around a left hand corner, you want to lean the bike to the inside of the corner, which is to the left. The way countersteering works is, if you think about a car, okay, a car has 4 wheels. If you've ever driven a car, or you've been a passenger in a car, if you're, say, on a 60 miles per hour road and you're going round a right hand bend, you feel everything in the car just moving to the left a bit. If you've got any air fresheners or anything hanging in the car, you'll see it going like that, alright? the force is pushing everything to the outside, alright? And if you went round the left hand corner, it would be the opposite. It would push everything to the outside. Oh, get away, wasp. Don't come in my helmet. Hate those things. Now with a car, you've got basically a square object with 4 wheels planted. So when the front wheels are turning and that force is pushing to the left, the outside wheels are stopping the car from going whoop, like that. Obviously if you went too fast, you would get understeering and the car would go straight on. But with a bike, that can't happen because there's only 2 wheels. There's nothing to stop us from going to the outside of that corner when we do that. We don't have a set of wheels to our left like a car does. All we've got is our centre mass. So to combat that, what you have to do is, if you're going round a right hand corner, the only way you're going to get the bike to go round that corner is to lean the bike. It's the only way the bike's going to go round the corner. Obviously if you're doing 5 or 10 miles per hour, you would steer normally. If you're on a national speed limit road, the only way that bike's going to get round there is by obviously the appropriate speed and by leaning the bike. Alright, that's just physics, that's how it works. Alright, there's no other way of doing it. We have to lean the bike to stop the bike going straight on. Alright, if we don't lean the bike's just going to go, rather than going round the corner, it's going to go and it's going to run wide. Alright, and that's why a lot of people run wide in corners, because they're not counter steering properly. They're not putting enough lean on the bike. They're thinking that, you know, they need to turn into the corner. You don't, you have to counter steer into the corner. Essentially what you're doing with counter steering, the wheel is turning in the opposite direction very, very briefly. You know, it's a minute distance, and all that's doing is that's leaning the bike to carry it round the corner. So I know that sounds kind of confusing, and you don't have to think about it that in depth, but that's the basics of counter steering. If you don't lean the bike through counter steering, you're not going to go round the corner. And it's exactly the same if you're going round the left hand corner. You know, you don't want to be doing that. As you come round the corner, you want to lean the bike into the corner so the bike leans round the corner. Now you can use your body, you can use your hips, you know, you can move your butt about if you want. See, I can use my hips just now. Obviously my feet are on the ground so I can do it, but if I'm riding in a straight line, I can shimmy my hips side to side and the bike will zigzag a little bit, but it's not enough force to get enough lean angle. But what you can do is you can use the two together. To be honest with you, do you really need to do it out on the road? Not necessarily. You know, you see a lot of MotoGP riders doing it. You know, they'll be hanging off the side of the bike. Their butt will be almost touching the ground with their knee. You know, they're hanging as much off to get that bike over as much as possible, to get as much lean angle to carry them round that corner at as fast a possible pace. Whereas we don't have to do that. We ride on the road, so you don't really need to do that. You occasionally see the occasional person who will be leaning off a wee bit. Counter steering is absolutely fine to get you around the corner, but if you want to, you know, you can throw your body about a little bit along with the counter steering, and it can be a little bit of fun, but you just need to be careful doing it. So another thing to take into consideration is the type of bike that you're riding. Is it a small bike? Is it a middleweight bike, or is it a big heavyweight bike? Little lightweight 125s, you know, 250s, 350s, they're lighter bikes, so they're easier to chuck about. The bigger the bike you get, the heavier the bike's going to be. So if you've got something like a Bandit 1250, that's like a 250 kilo bike. Or some of these big adventure bikes, some of them can weigh 270 kilos upwards. Some of these big tourer style bikes, they are heavy, heavy bikes. So counter steering is just as easy to do on them. But if you're counter steering to the point where you're leaning the bike over so much, you've got to remember that you've got a lot of weight to get straightened back up. Alright, now obviously counter steering and throttle is going to naturally straighten the bike up, because the thing you have to remember is you don't just counter steer going into a corner, you counter steer coming out of a corner. So you counter steer to initiate the lean, and you counter steer to straighten back up. Now as you're going round the corner, you can also manipulate the counter steer a wee bit to help you keep the right line and the right pace, but you're basically counter steering in and counter steering out. So when it comes to the actual counter steering, you can absolutely do it with just one finger. I don't recommend doing that because that is just dangerous. That just proves how little effort it takes to actually get a bike to counter steer. So don't do that. Don't do that out on the road. That's just very, very dangerous. You should always have full control of the bike, but you can, and that just proves how little effort you have to put into countersteering. So when it comes to the actual countersteer itself, how do you push the bars? What do you do? So do you push down, push straight forward? What do you do? Well, see where my levers are here? That's kind of the angle you want to push towards, basically a 45-degree angle. If you think of a 90-degree angle, right, going straight along and straight down, alright? So you've got 90 degrees, then imagine a 45-degree angle going straight down to the ground, like that. Basically where my levers are at. Now everybody's levers are different, you know, they might be higher, lower, so don't use that as a judgment. I'm just fortunate that's where my levers are, that's where I find them comfortable. But that's roughly where I push my bar, towards my levers. So you're pushing down at an angle, you're not pushing straight forward, you're not pushing down, you're pushing down and towards the ground. So as you countersteer going into the corner, you're going round the corner, and you see your exit, you start to apply the throttle, and what you're doing is this is a right hand corner by the way, if you're going round the right hand corner, once you get to the midpoint or the apex of the corner, and you start to apply more power, what you do is obviously the power will help straighten the bike up anyway, but what you then do is you countersteer on the left bar, and that straightens the bike back up. Same with the left hand corner, you lean, you go into the left hand corner, there's the apex, on with the throttle, push the bar, and the bike straightens back up. So you can manipulate the countersteer as you go around the corner depending on what the corner is doing. So if you need to change line slightly, say the corner is tightening up a wee bit, you know, you would off the power and you'd add more countersteer, and then you would judge it if the corner straightening back up again, power and countersteer in the opposite direction to straighten the bike back up. So you're countersteering in, and then you're countersteering going through the corner if you need to, and then you're countersteering back out. Now if you're going around the corner and you realise that you don't actually have to do anything, you can just hold the countersteer where it is. Don't think, oh, this is the perfect line, I can just relax, because the bike's just going to straighten back up, because you've essentially straightened the bars up. You know, you need to hold that countersteer with your hand. It's a really easy skill to learn because you already do it, but just understanding it makes it easier to do. There are more in-depth things to look into, like I said, you know, you look into the physics of it and all that sort of stuff, but that gets really confusing, and to be honest with you, it's not needed. All you really need to know is how to countersteer. That's it. You don't need to know the in-depth theory behind it, unless that's your thing. You know, if you want to do that, go for it. But I personally don't think you need to know that. You know, it's, what's the point of making something confusing that isn't confusing, you know? So what we're going to do is we're going to nip out on the bike, and I'm just going to go for a wee run. The roads are pretty slippy today, so I'm just going to take it easy. What I'll do is I'll talk while I'm going through the corners. The one thing obviously you want to do while you're countersteering is you want to stay nice and relaxed. If you are tensed up, if your arms are stiff, it's very hard to countersteer the bike, but by staying nice and relaxed, you can countersteer to your wee heart's content. Grip the tank, not overly tight, just so you've got a nice solid grip with the lower half of your body, just so the top half of your body can stay nice and loose. Even just coming round here, I'm countersteering. You know, we're doing 20 miles per hour, fast enough to countersteer. Coming out of the roundabout, I'm countersteering. Even just going round this, it's a long sweeping corner, you're using a little countersteering. So we'll go around this little bit. It's only 40 miles per hour, which is perfect for practicing your countersteering. You don't need to be going round any fast roads doing silly speeds. When you're first going to go out and think to yourself, I'm actually going to practice countersteering, do it on roads that you know, do it on roads that aren't fast. 30-40 mile an hour roads are perfect. So I don't really need to change position here, I'm still in position 2. The roads aren't, you know, anywhere severe enough, but all I'm doing is see just how much the lean is making me turn. We're only leaning by that much, but it means that I'm not having to do anything. All I'm doing is I'm just putting a slight amount of pressure on the bar. I'm just pushing the bar. See, now I know I'm at the right line. We can straighten it back up there, and I'm going round this corner again. I'm just pushing the bar to the inside of the corner, pushing on the left to straighten it back out. So you lean to the inside of the corner and you push the bar in the direction that you want to go. Now obviously you have to take into consideration everything that's going on around about you. You have to think of speed limit, what's on the road, what condition is the road in, is the road wet, is it greasy? All these things are going to affect how you ride a bike and how you countersteer, because you don't want to be flying round the corner, leaning the bike over like Rossi on a greasy road. That is just a disaster waiting to happen. Counter steering, like any part of riding a bike, it just takes time to get used to it, and it takes time to get fairly good and confident at it. But once you get to a point where you feel that you're pretty confident and you can pick up the pace a wee bit, obviously sensibly, you'll realise just how much fun knowing how to counter steer correctly can be. It is so much fun. Obviously at this time of year, if you're out on the road, you're taking your time. You know, it's cold, it's wet, it's miserable, the roads could be slippy, we're going to be getting ice, you know, soon, so you're not really going to be out too much anyway. But when you come into those spring and summer months when the roads are dry and you've got a full tank of fuel, it is just the best day. So give it a wee practice. Go and sit on your bike and just sit and have a wee practice. Practice pushing the bars and you'll see just how little effort you have to use. Obviously you have to use more effort when the bike is stationary because it's not moving, but you can see just how much you can manipulate the lean of the bike just by sitting stationary and pushing the handlebars. So again, this isn't a tight corner. I'm just putting a slight amount of pressure on the handlebar, and then I'm pushing on the other handlebar to straighten the bike back up. And that's about all there is to counter steering. You know, it's not a hard technique to learn. It's definitely not the hardest thing to learn on riding a bike by any means. You know, it's one of those things that you'll learn to do pretty quickly, you know, because you'll be doing it on your CBT. Because you'll be out on the road in the afternoon and you'll be riding about the town doing 30, 40, 50 miles an hour, whatever, and you're going to be counter steering. What you can do is you can counter steer around the corner. Wow, look at that house, somebody's ready for Halloween. You can counter steer around the corner only using one hand. I wouldn't recommend doing that when you first pass your test, but as you get more comfortable with the bike, you're in more control of the bike, you'll find that you can do that sort of stuff. You know, I don't recommend doing it, I'm just showing you that that's how easy counter steering is. Obviously you can't just do it with your left hand because you need to work the throttle, but you can do it with just one hand. And what I'm going to do is I'm just using my hips. See, I'm just using my hips and the bike turns still, but if I was to use my hips and the counter steering, you know, you can get the bike leant over a bit more, take those twisties, have a bit more fun. But obviously, like anything, just be careful and be safe. And again, very, very minimal pressure. You know, I'm not doing anything ridiculous. It's just very lightly pushing at that 45-degree angle. And see, these are slightly tighter corners, so I'm having to push slightly more on the bar. See, the bike's leaning over just that bit more, and what I'm doing is I'm using my right hand to help keep the bike on line. So if I feel the bike is getting a little bit tighter than what I want, I just push in the opposite direction to keep it on line. And see how the corners are tightening up, and I'm just manipulating the bars to help me keep the correct line. I'm not adjusting my power by any means because I don't need to. You know, my limit point's staying the same. I can keep the same power on. There's absolutely no need to change anything apart from maybe a little bit of tweaking of the counter steering. Go out, have a practice, have some fun. We're almost in November, so it's not the best weather for riding. So if you're going out to give it a wee practice or practice any part of riding, just be careful, take your time, go around roads that you know, make sure you're keeping an eye on that road condition. If you see a road condition that you don't like the look of, be very, very careful. Don't try and practice anything going over a dodgy bit of road. But if you've got any questions about counter steering or anything related to Mod 2 or just generally riding a bike, feel free to get in touch. Leave a comment below, or you can get me on social media. And as always, dudes, a big congrats to everyone who's passing their Mod 1s and 2s. I'm getting lots of messages coming in about people passing. So good to hear. It's so good to hear, dudes. So congrats to everybody who's passed. If you've got a test coming up, all the best. I'm sure you'll do absolutely fine. But anyway, dudes, hopefully you've enjoyed this video. If you have, guys, give it the thumbs up. I really do appreciate every single one of your likes. And of course, if you want to see all of my uploads, click on that subscribe button and ring the bell while you're there. That way you'll get notified every time I upload a video. But until next time, dudes, stay safe, ride safe, take it easy.